Korean Mafia boss couldn't believe it. Black Cleaner's baby clung to him. The baby's scream pierced through the marble hallway like a siren. "Please, Elise, please stop crying," Kesha whispered desperately, bouncing her 11-month-old daughter against her hip. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she tried to soothe the wailing child. "Mama's got to work. Baby girl, please." But Elise only screamed louder, her tiny fist clenched, her face scrunched up and red with fury. What happens when a single mother's crying baby catches the attention of Seoul's most dangerous crime lord? Stay with me, because what unfolds next will leave you absolutely speechless. The other cleaners in the hallway shot Keisha nervous glances before quickly looking away, their bodies tensing as if preparing to flee at any moment. "You need to control that child," Mrs. Chin hissed, the head housekeeper's eyes darting toward the double doors at the end of the corridor, genuine terror flickering across her weathered face. "If he hears—" I know. Kesha's heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest entirely. She'd only been working at this mansion for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of scrubbing floors in one of Seoul's most dangerous households. 3 weeks of keeping her head down and her mouth shut. 3 weeks of pretending she didn't know exactly who Tae-jin Choi was. 3 weeks of walking on eggshells so thin she could hear them cracking beneath every step. "The nanny called in sick this morning," Kesha explained, her voice shaking so badly she could barely form the words. "I called everyone I know. Everyone. Nobody could watch her on such short notice. And I needed this job. I thought if I could just keep her quiet." "Thought wrong." Mrs. Chin snapped, her face pale as death itself. "Do you have any idea what kind of man?" The double doors exploded open with a force that made the chandelier above them tremble. Every person in that hallway froze. Not just stopped moving, but froze completely, like statues carved from pure fear. Even their breathing seemed to halt, as if the air itself had become too dangerous to disturb. Tae-jin Choi stood in the doorway like a storm made flesh, like violence given human form and wrapped in expensive Italian fabric. 6 feet of controlled destruction in a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than Kesha would make in 5 years. His jaw was clenched so tight that Kesha could see the muscle twitching beneath his skin. A small movement that somehow made him seem even more dangerous. His eyes, cold, dark, absolutely merciless, swept across the frozen staff members like the barrel of a gun searching for a target. "Who," he said quietly, terrifyingly quiet, "is making that noise?" His voice was soft, dangerously soft. The kind of soft that came right before something terrible happened. The kind of soft that made grown men confess to crimes they didn't commit. The kind of soft that had probably been the last thing 17 people heard before they stopped hearing anything at all. Keisha's blood turned to ice in her veins. Her stomach dropped somewhere down near her feet. Every cell in her body screamed danger. Run. Protect your child. But she couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Could only stand there clutching Elise while her daughter continued to scream. Oblivious to the danger, her little body shaking with the force of her cries. I asked a question. Tae-jin took 1 step forward. Just one. But it felt like the temperature in the hallway dropped 20 degrees. Frost might as well have formed on the marble floors. The chandelier might as well have started swaying from the sheer force of his presence. It's mine, sir," Kesha forced out, her voice barely a whisper, barely anything at all. "My daughter. I'm so sorry. The nanny. Bring her here." Kesha's knees nearly buckled, every drop of strength drained from her legs. "Sir, I don't repeat myself." Every survival instinct Keisha possessed, every alarm bell evolution had installed in the human brain, screamed at her to run, to grab Elise and sprint out of this mansion and never look back. To get on the first plane back to America and pretend South Korea didn't exist. But her feet moved forward instead, betraying every rational thought in her head, carrying her and her screaming baby toward the most feared man in Seoul's underground. The other staff members scattered like cockroaches when light hits them, disappearing into doorways and around corners so fast they might have never existed at all. Within seconds, the hallway was empty except for Keisha, Elise, and the man who could end both their lives with a single word. Keisha stopped 3 feet away from Taejin, her arms wrapped protectively around Elise, trying to shield her daughter with her own body even though she knew it was useless. Up close, she could see everything. The scar running along his left cheekbone. A thin white line that somehow made him even more intimidating. The absolute absence of warmth in his expression, like looking at a beautiful statue carved from ice. The way his hands hung loose at his sides, relaxed but ready, like a predator that didn't need to tense before striking. "I'm sorry," she said again, hating how her voice trembled, hating how weak she sounded, hating everything about this moment. "I'll leave right now. I'll—" "How old?" Kesha blinked, thrown completely off balance. "What?" "The child. How old is she?" 11 months, sir." Taejin's eyes dropped to Elise, who was still crying, her face buried against Keisha's shoulder, her tiny body racked with sobs. For a long moment he just stared. His expression didn't change, didn't soften. If anything, it became more focused, more intense. Like he was trying to solve a puzzle written in a language he'd forgotten. Then he did something that made Kesha's world tilt sideways, that made reality itself seem to crack and reform into something she didn't recognize. He reached out his hand. Slowly, deliberately. Palm up, fingers slightly curved, in a gesture that was almost gentle. "Don't." The word burst from Keisha before she could stop it. Before her brain could catch up with her mouth. She immediately took a step back, clutching Elise tighter, her arms becoming a cage of flesh and bone around her daughter. "I mean, I'm sorry, sir, but she doesn't like strangers. She doesn't let anyone hold her. Not even my mother. She just screams louder if—" Taejin's hand remained extended. Patient. Waiting. Like he had all the time in the world. Like he wasn't a man whose time was literally worth millions per hour. Like he was actually interested in holding a screaming baby instead of conducting whatever dark business usually filled his days. "Please," Kesha tried again, desperation making her voice crack. "She'll just—" Elise's head popped up from Keisha's shoulder. The crying stopped. Just stopped. Like someone had flipped a switch. Like the universe itself had decided to pause and watch what happened next. Kesha felt her daughter's body shift, felt those tiny hands releasing their death grip on her shirt and reaching out, grabbing toward Taejin like he was a lifeline instead of a man who'd allegedly killed 17 people with his bare hands, like he was safety instead of the most dangerous thing in this entire building. "No, baby. No." Kesha tried to hold on, tried to keep her daughter close, but Elise was squirming now, lunging toward this stranger with an urgency that made absolutely no sense. Fighting against Keisha's grip with surprising strength, whimpering with frustration, reaching those little hands toward Taejin like she'd die if she couldn't get to him. "Let her go," Taejin said quietly. "Sir, I don't think—" "Let her go." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a command. It was just a statement of what would happen next, inevitable as gravity. Kesha's arms loosened despite every instinct screaming otherwise, despite every maternal alarm going off in her brain, despite everything she knew about keeping her daughter safe. And Elise, her baby girl who screamed when her own grandmother tried to hold her, who couldn't even tolerate the pediatrician touching her without a complete meltdown, who'd cried for 45 minutes straight when a kind stranger at the grocery store tried to make her smile, practically threw herself into Taejin Choi's arms. The silence that followed was deafening, more complete than any silence Kesha had ever experienced, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring, the kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat, your own blood rushing through your veins. Taejin stood there. This man who commanded an empire built on fear and blood and violence. This man whose name made grown criminals weep. This man who'd built his fortune on the backs of the dead and the terrified, with an 11-month-old baby girl clinging to his neck. Elise's tiny fists gripped his expensive suit jacket, probably wrinkling fabric that cost more than Kesha's car. Her cheek pressed against his shoulder, finding comfort in the hollow there like it had been made specifically for her. Her body relaxed completely, utterly trusting, utterly safe, utterly content. And Taejin. His expression cracked. Just for a second. Just long enough for Kesha to see something that looked almost like shock, almost like wonder, almost like pain flash across his face before the mask slammed back down, before the ice reformed, before he became unreadable again. She's calm, he observed, his voice oddly neutral, almost confused, like he was reporting something he couldn't quite believe himself. Kesha couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up completely. Her brain simply refused to process what she was seeing, refused to accept this reality, refused to make sense of the impossible thing happening right in front of her eyes. Her baby, her difficult, particular, stranger-hating baby, was falling asleep in a mafia boss's arms. If you're as shocked as Kesha right now, drop a comment below. What do you think is happening here? And if you're invested in this story, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. Kesha swallowed hard, trying to find her voice, trying to find any words that made sense. Yes, sir. I don't understand. She never. What's her name? Elise. Taejin adjusted his hold on the baby slightly, supporting her more securely, his large hands gentle in a way that seemed completely at odds with everything Kesha knew about him. Elise made a small, contented sound, a little sigh of pure peace, and closed her eyes. She was falling asleep in a mafia boss's arms in under 30 seconds flat. 30 seconds. It had taken Kesha 40 minutes to get her down for her nap that morning. Sir. Mrs. Chin's voice cracked from somewhere down the hallway, thin and terrified. Your meeting. The Busan representatives are waiting. They've been waiting for 20 minutes already. Reschedule it. Sir, I said, reschedule it. Taejin's voice cut like a blade through butter, sharp and absolute and final. But he didn't raise it, didn't change his volume at all, didn't disturb the sleeping child in his arms. All the deadliness was in the tone, in the expectation of immediate obedience, in the unspoken threat of what would happen if that obedience wasn't forthcoming. His eyes found Kesha's, locked onto them with an intensity that made her feel pinned in place. You. What's your name? Kesha, sir. Kesha Williams. American. Yes, sir. I moved here 18 months ago. I was studying at Yonsei University before. She stopped herself, biting her tongue. He didn't need her life story. He didn't care about her dreams or her failures, or how she'd ended up scrubbing toilets in his mansion. Taejin studied her for a long moment, his eyes moving over her face like he was memorizing every feature, cataloging every detail. Kesha forced herself to hold his gaze even though every cell in her body wanted to look away, wanted to submit, wanted to show the proper deference to a predator. The father, he asked, his voice dropping even quieter. Where is he? Keisha's jaw tightened automatically, her teeth clenching so hard it hurt. Not in the picture. By choice. Does it matter? The corner of Taejin's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Not quite. Just a tiny movement that might have been amusement or might have been something else entirely. You have a spine? Interesting. He looked down at Elise again, and something unreadable flickered across his face, something that might have been sadness or longing or pain or all three mixed together. The baby slept on, completely peaceful, completely safe in the arms of Seoul's most dangerous man. Follow me, Taejin said, turning back toward his office without waiting for a response. Sir, that wasn't a request. Kesha's feet moved automatically, following him through those double doors into an office that probably cost more than she'd make in her entire lifetime, even if she lived to be 100. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Seoul's glittering skyline, the city spread out below like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Mahogany furniture that gleamed like it was polished daily, probably was polished daily. Original artwork on the walls, pieces she recognized from her art history classes, pieces that belonged in museums, pieces worth millions. And in the corner, something that made Kesha's breath catch and her heart skip. a bulletproof glass case containing at least a dozen handguns, displayed like they were fine wines or precious jewels. Sit, Tajan commanded, gesturing to a leather chair that probably cost more than her entire apartment deposit. Kesha sat. She watched, completely bewildered, completely lost in this surreal moment, as this man, this dangerous, cold-blooded man, carefully, almost tenderly, shifted Elise in his arms to sit down behind his massive desk without waking her. He moved like he'd held babies before, like he knew exactly how to support her head, how to keep her comfortable, how to maintain the perfect position for sleep. Explain to me, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving Elise's sleeping face, why you thought bringing an infant into my home was acceptable. My nanny had a family emergency, Kesha said, fighting to keep her voice steady, fighting to maintain what little composure she had left. I called everyone I know. Everyone. My neighbors, my old classmates, people I barely talk to anymore. Nobody could watch her on such short notice. And I needed this job, sir. I'm 3 months behind on rent. The landlord's threatening to evict us. I thought if I could just keep her quiet, if I could just make it through one shift. You thought you could hide a baby in my mansion. Yes, sir. Foolish. Yes, sir. And desperate. Kesha lifted her chin, meeting his eyes directly, refusing to look away even though it terrified her. Very. Tajan's eyes narrowed slightly, but again, that ghost of something that might have been amusement crossed his face. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, Kesha corrected. But I'm more afraid of being homeless with a baby. I'm more afraid of my daughter sleeping on the street. I'm more afraid of failing her than I am of you killing me. Honesty. Also interesting. He glanced down at Elise, whose little fist had wrapped around his tie, gripping the expensive silk like it was a security blanket. She's trusting. She's never trusted anyone before, Kesha admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Not like this. My mother flew here from Atlanta last month and Elise screamed every time she tried to hold her, every single time, for 3 days straight. I don't understand it. I don't understand what's happening right now. Neither do I. They sat in strange silence for a moment. Kesha watched this feared mafia boss cradling her daughter like she was made of glass, like she was the most precious thing in the world. Watched him unconsciously adjust his hold when Elise shifted slightly, natural as breathing. Watched something in his expression soften in a way she suspected very few people ever witnessed, a crack in the armor that revealed something almost human underneath. Smash that like button if you need to know what happens next. Seriously, you're going to want to stick around for this. Sir? Kesha ventured carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. May I have her back? I should... No. Kesha froze, her heart stopping in her chest. No? She's calm. Why would I disturb that? Tajan leaned back in his chair, settling in like he planned to stay there for a while, seemingly completely unbothered by the fact that he was holding a sleeping infant during what should have been a high-stakes business meeting with representatives from Busan. Tell me about yourself. Sir? Your story. Why are you in Seoul cleaning houses when you were studying at one of the country's top universities? Kesha hesitated. This felt like a trap. Everything about this situation felt like a trap. Like she was walking through a minefield blindfolded. But those dark eyes demanded an answer. Expected truth. Would probably know if she tried to lie. I got pregnant, she said simply, deciding that honesty was her only option. My boyfriend, Elise's father, didn't take it well. Told me to get rid of it or he'd get rid of me. Those were his exact words. Get rid of it. Like she was trash. Like she was a problem to be solved. I refused. He left. Cut me off completely. Changed his number. Blocked me on everything. Told our friends I was trying to trap him. My scholarship covered tuition but not living expenses, especially not with a baby on the way. Medical bills, maternity clothes, preparing for her arrival. I had to drop out. Started cleaning houses because it was the only work I could get without a degree, and with flexible hours for when she came. The father is Korean? American. Military. He was stationed here temporarily. Keisha's voice hardened, turned bitter. He went back to the States 3 months before Elise was born, changed his number. Blocked me on everything. Sent me one final message telling me I was on my own and he never wanted to hear from me again. His name? Why? Tejan repeated, and this time there was something sharp in his voice, something dangerous, something that suggested he was already planning what he'd do with that information. Kesha shook her head firmly. I don't want him dead, sir. I just want him gone. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They are to me. Keisha's voice was steady now, certain. Elise doesn't need a dead father. She needs a mother who isn't a murderer. She needs a mother who can look her in the eye and tell her she did the right thing even when it was hard. Tejan stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, his eyes searching her face for something. Then, inexplicably, impossibly, he smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his entire face, softened every hard edge, made him look almost human instead of like a beautiful monster carved from marble and menace. You're protecting a man who abandoned you and your child, he said, and there was something almost like respect in his voice. Why? Because Elise doesn't need a dead father, Kesha repeated. She needs a mother who isn't a murderer. She needs to know that we survived without him, that we were strong enough without his blood on our hands. The smile faded slowly, like sunset bleeding into night. I see. May I have my daughter back now, sir? I'll leave. I understand. You'll need to fire me. I'll pack my things and... You're not fired. Kesha blinked, certain she'd heard wrong. I'm not. No. Tejan stood up carefully, moving with practiced precision, still cradling Elise like she was the most important thing he'd held in years. He walked around the desk, each step measured and deliberate, and with infinite care, with a gentleness that seemed impossible from hands that had killed, transferred the sleeping baby back into Keisha's arms. Elise stirred slightly but didn't wake, just made a small sound and nestled into Keisha's shoulder, seeking familiar warmth. In fact, Tejan continued, his voice taking on that tone that suggested his decision was already made and arguing would be pointless, your circumstances are about to change significantly. I don't understand. You will. Tejan returned to his desk and pressed a button on his phone, a small beep echoing in the vast office. Seojun, come to my office. Within seconds, the door opened. A man entered, tall and lean with sharp features and eyes that missed absolutely nothing, that cataloged every detail of a room in microseconds. He took one look at Keisha holding a baby, and his eyebrows shot up so high they almost disappeared into his hairline. Boss, he started, clearly confused. This is Keisha Williams and her daughter Elise, Tejan said, his voice casual, matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather instead of something that would apparently change Keisha's entire life. Effective immediately, Keisha is no longer part of the cleaning staff. Keisha's stomach dropped somewhere down near the floor. Sir, she's my new personal assistant. The room went silent. Completely, totally silent. Seojun's jaw actually dropped, his professional composure cracking completely. You're what? You heard me? Tejan's voice was calm, matter-of-fact, as if he hadn't just said something absolutely insane, as if he promoted cleaning staff to personal assistant positions every day. Kesha needs employment that accommodates her daughter. I need someone who isn't afraid to speak honestly to me. It's an efficient arrangement. Boss, with all due respect, Seojun started carefully, choosing his words like he was defusing a bomb. Is there a problem? The temperature in the room plummeted again, that same deadly cold that had filled the hallway earlier. Seojun immediately shut his mouth and shook his head rapidly. No, sir. No problem at all. Good. Tejan's eyes found Keisha's, held them with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. Your salary will be 15 million won per month. The apartment above the garage is vacant. You and Elise will move in tomorrow. Child care will be provided on site. You'll work standard business hours. Your responsibilities will include managing my schedule, screening communications, and attending meetings as needed. Kesha couldn't breathe. 15 million won. That was more than $10,000 per month. That was more than she'd made in 6 months of cleaning. That was enough to save money, to plan for the future, to give Elise everything she needed. Sir, I can't. You can, and you will. Something flickered in his expression, something that might have been vulnerability or might have been pain. Considerate payment for something your daughter has reminded me of. What's that? Tejan looked at Elise, still sleeping peacefully in Keisha's arms, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Raw and honest in a way that felt like witnessing something private. That not everyone sees a monster when they look at me. Stay tuned for what happens next. Subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this incredible story. You're going to want to see where this relationship goes. Kesha didn't sleep that night. How could she? 24 hours ago, she'd been scrubbing toilets in a borrowed uniform 2 sizes too big, dodging eviction notices slipped under her apartment door, wondering if she'd have to choose between feeding Elise or keeping the electricity on. Now she was sitting in a luxury apartment with marble countertops that gleamed like ice, stainless steel appliances that probably cost more than her college tuition, and a view of the Han River that made the city look like something out of a dream. Watching Elise sleep in a brand new crib that probably cost more than Kesha's entire life savings. This is crazy, she whispered to herself, to the empty room, to the universe that had apparently decided to turn her life upside down. This is absolutely crazy. This doesn't happen. Things like this don't happen to people like me. Her phone buzzed on the granite countertop, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet apartment. A message from an unknown number. Be ready at 8 a.m. SEO Jun will brief you on your duties. Dress professionally. TC. Taejin Choi had her number. The Mafia boss had her personal phone number. Had probably had one of his people pull her file, her background check, everything about her. Kesha's hands shook as she typed back. Yes, sir. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Like he was typing and deleting and typing again. The baby. She slept well? Kesha stared at her phone like it had grown a second screen, like reality had fractured and reformed into something unrecognizable. Was Seoul's most feared crime lord really asking about her daughter's sleep schedule? Was this actually happening? Yes, sir. She's been out for 3 hours. That's a record. She usually wakes up every hour crying. Good. That was it. Just good. But something about that single word made Keisha's chest feel strange, made warmth bloom somewhere behind her ribs, made her smile despite everything, despite the insanity of this entire situation. Drop a comment if you think something deeper is going on here. Because I'm telling you, this is just the beginning. The next morning came too fast. Kesha dressed in the only professional outfit she owned, a simple black dress she'd bought secondhand for university presentations 3 years ago, back when she'd thought her biggest worry would be thesis defenses and job interviews. She did her makeup carefully, trying to cover the dark circles under her eyes, twisted her hair into a neat bun, and tried to look like someone who belonged in a mafia boss's inner circle. She failed, spectacularly. The dress was slightly too big now. She'd lost weight from stress and irregular meals. The shoes were scuffed no matter how much she'd polished them. She looked exactly like what she was, a broke single mother playing dress-up. You look terrified, Seojun observed when he arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, punctual to the second. He handed her a tablet that was sleeker than anything she'd ever owned and a black phone that felt expensive just to hold. That's normal. Everyone's terrified of him at first. At first? Kesha adjusted Elise on her hip, trying to look more confident than she felt. When does that stop? It doesn't. You just get better at hiding it. Seojun's expression softened slightly when he looked at Elise, who was chewing on her fist and watching him with curious eyes. The boss arranged for a nanny. She'll be here in 10 minutes. Former intelligence officer, trained in child safety and security protocol. Your daughter will be safer than the president's kids. Why is he doing this? Kesha asked quietly, voicing the question that had kept her up all night. None of this makes sense. I'm nobody. I'm just a cleaning woman with a baby who happened to cry in the wrong hallway. Seojun studied her for a long moment, his eyes searching her face like he was trying to decide how much to tell her. The boss doesn't explain himself. Ever. But I've worked for him for 8 years and I've never seen him react to anyone the way he reacted to your daughter yesterday. Whatever she did. Whatever he saw in her. He shook his head, clearly struggling to find words. It changed something. I don't know what. But something fundamental shifted. Before Kesha could respond, before she could ask what he meant, the doorbell rang. The nanny was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes, and the posture of someone who could probably kill you with a chopstick and make it look like an accident. Her name was Ms. Huang, and within 5 minutes, Elise was giggling in her arms like they'd known each other forever, like Ms. Huang was her favorite person in the world. She's precious, Ms. Huang said warmly, bouncing Elise gently. We'll have a wonderful day together. Don't worry about a thing. Kesha's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't quite name. She doesn't usually... I know. Seojun briefed me. Ms. Huang smiled gently. But children sense energy, and right now, your baby feels safe here. That's all that matters. Safe, in a Mafia compound. The irony wasn't lost on Kesha. Taejin's office was exactly as she remembered, intimidating, expensive, and somehow cold, despite the morning sunlight streaming through those floor-to-ceiling windows and painting the room gold. He stood by those windows now, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean in a voice that could freeze hell itself. He looked up when she entered, his eyes moving over her in one quick, assessing glance, and held up one finger. Wait. Kesha waited, standing just inside the door like a student called to the principal's office. If those shipments aren't in Busan by Friday, Taejin said into the phone, his voice dropping to something deadly, something that made the hair on Kesha's arms stand up. I'll personally ensure you spend the rest of your very short life regretting it. Are we clear? A pause. Silence that stretched like pulled taffy. Excellent. He ended the call and turned to face her fully. His eyes traveled over her appearance once, quickly, professionally, noting everything. You look nervous. I am nervous, sir. Don't be. You're here because your daughter has better judgment than most adults I know. He moved to his desk, his movements fluid and controlled, and gestured for her to sit. Today, you observe. Watch everything. Ask questions. Learn how I work. Yes, sir. And Kesha? Sir? Stop calling me sir every sentence. Taejin is fine when we're alone. Her eyes widened. She felt her heart skip a beat. I don't care what you think. I care what I tell you to do. But there was no heat in his voice. Almost like he was testing her. Like this was some kind of exam she didn't know she was taking. Say it. Say what? My name. Keisha's heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. This felt dangerous. Intimate in a way that made her skin prickle, that made the air between them feel charged. Taejin, she forced out, her voice barely steady. His expression didn't change, but something flashed in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or something deeper. Better. Now, we have 4 meetings today. 2 with legitimate business partners, 2 with people who would kill me if they thought they could get away with it. Your job is to take notes and watch body language. Tell me afterward what you noticed. You want me to analyze people? Your daughter saw something in me that no one else sees. Taejin's voice was quiet, thoughtful. I'm curious if you inherited that same instinct. Hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get intense. You don't want to miss what's coming. The first meeting was with a tech CEO who kept glancing at Kesha like she was a bomb that might explode, like her presence was some kind of test he didn't understand. Taejin negotiated a partnership deal worth billions of won without raising his voice once. He was smooth, calculated, terrifying in his precision. Every word was chosen carefully. Every pause was deliberate. He moved through the negotiation like a chess grandmaster who could see 20 moves ahead. The second meeting was with an older man covered in tattoos that crawled up his neck and disappeared under his collar. Yakuza, Kesha realized with ice flooding her veins. They spoke in a mixture of Korean and Japanese that she couldn't follow, but she didn't need to understand the words to understand the dynamic. Taejin's entire demeanor changed. Harder, colder, more dangerous. Less businessman, more predator. The kind of man who could order someone's death between bites of lunch. When the man left, when the door clicked shut behind him, Taejin turned to her with that same assessing gaze. What did you notice? Keisha hesitated, second-guessing herself. The tech CEO was afraid of you, but the Yakuza boss respected you. There's a difference. Go on. The CEO kept looking at me because he was trying to figure out our relationship. If I'm someone important to you, someone you care about, he'll try to use that somehow. Leverage or information or something. The Yakuza boss never looked at me once. He already knew I was irrelevant to the negotiation. A secretary. Background noise. Taejin's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Not bad. What else? The tech CEO is going to try to renegotiate in 3 months, Kesha continued, gaining confidence. He agreed too easily to the terms. He's planning something, waiting for a better position. And the Yakuza boss is planning something too. He kept touching his ring. Left hand, third finger. A nervous tell. He's worried about something. Taejin leaned back in his chair, studying her with new interest, like she'd just revealed something unexpected. You're observant. I'm a single mother. You learn to read people when your survival depends on it. You learn to know when the landlord is serious about evicting you or just trying to scare you. You learn to know which neighbors to trust with your spare key. You learn because you have to. Indeed. He stood up, the movement fluid and controlled. We're done for the day. Go check on Elise. Kesha blinked, confused. It's only 2 p.m. And you've done more than I expected. Go be with your daughter. She didn't need to be told twice, but as she reached the door, as her hand touched the handle, his voice stopped her. Kesha. She turned. Taejin stood by the window again, backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the glass. For a moment, just a brief moment, he looked almost lonely, isolated in a way that money and power couldn't fix. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not running. Most people would have. Kesha thought about that for a moment. Really thought about it. Then she smiled. Small, but genuine. Most people don't have a baby who apparently thinks you're some kind of teddy bear. His laugh was unexpected. Brief, but real. A sound that transformed his face completely. Get out of here before I assign you more work. The weeks that followed fell into a strange rhythm that somehow became normal. Kesha learned the business. Both the legitimate side that dealt in real estate and tech investments, and the parts that existed in shadows, that dealt in things she tried not to think about too carefully. She sat in meetings with gang leaders who had bodies buried in foundations, and corporate executives who wore $1,000 suits and had blood on their hands too. Just different kinds. She watched Taejin command rooms with nothing but his presence, watched men twice his age defer to him, watched him build and destroy with equal ease. And every evening, without fail, he stopped by the apartment to see Elise. She's growing, he observed one night, crouching down as Elise toddled toward him on unsteady legs, her little arms outstretched for balance. She grabbed his finger with both hands, laughing with pure joy, and he steadied her gently. She's walking, Kesha exclaimed, her heart swelling with pride and happiness. Taejin. I see. His voice was soft, reverent, filled with wonder. He scooped Elise up and she immediately patted his face with her tiny hands, exploring his features with innocent curiosity. Look at you, he murmured, getting so strong, so brave. Kesha's heart did something complicated in her chest, something she tried not to examine too closely. You're good with her, she said quietly. I had a sister once. She was small like this. His jaw tightened, muscles tensing beneath skin. A long time ago. What happened? She died. I couldn't protect her. The words hung in the air like smoke, like ghosts. I'm sorry, Kesha whispered. Don't be. It made me what I am. He looked at Elise, something raw and painful crossing his face, something that looked like old grief never fully healed. But your daughter, she doesn't see what I am. She just sees me. Maybe that's because she knows who you actually are? Keisha said softly. Taejin's eyes met hers, dark and intense. And who is that? I'm still figuring that out. Comment below. Do you think there's something romantic brewing here? Because I'm starting to wonder. Everything changed on a Tuesday. Kesha was reviewing contracts in Taejin's office, trying to understand the legal jargon, when Seojun burst through the door without knocking. Gun already drawn, safety off, expression pure controlled panic. Boss, we have a problem. Kim's crew just... The window exploded. Glass rained down like deadly snow, thousands of shards catching the afternoon light as they fell. Keisha screamed as Taejin dove across the desk with inhuman speed, slamming into her, dragging her to the floor. His body covered hers completely, sheltering her, as bullets tore through the office like angry hornets. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. The world became chaos and noise and terror. Stay down, he roared, his voice cutting through the gunfire. More gunfire. Shouting in Korean. The sound of cars screeching outside, engines revving. More shots. Taejin was on his phone instantly, barking orders. Hwang, secure the baby. Now. Lock down the apartment. Full protocol. He looked down at Keisha, his face inches from hers, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Are you hurt? She shook her head, too shocked to speak, her ears ringing from the gunfire. Good. He rolled off her with practiced efficiency. A gun appearing in his hand like magic, like it had always been there. Seojun, perimeter. 3 vehicles, Kim's men, they're not leaving until... Another explosion, closer this time, shaking the entire building. Pictures fell from walls. The chandelier swayed dangerously. They're coming inside, Taejin said calmly. Too calmly. Like this was just another Tuesday. Like people tried to kill him every week. He grabbed Keisha's face in both hands, forcing her to look at him, to focus on him instead of the chaos. Listen to me very carefully. You're going to crawl to that door. You're going to run to your apartment. You're going to lock yourself and Elise in the panic room. The code is 0815. Do you understand? What about you? I'll handle this. Taejin. Now move. Kesha crawled. Glass cut her palms, her knees, leaving bloody trails on the marble floor. She didn't care. She just needed to get to Elise, needed to protect her baby. Behind her, she heard Taejin's voice drop into something that wasn't quite human, something that sounded like death-given voice. You just made the last mistake of your lives. Then gunfire erupted like thunder, like the end of the world. Kesha ran faster than she'd ever run in her life, her lungs burning, her heart threatening to explode. She burst into the apartment where Ms. Hwang already had Elise in her arms, both of them heading for the reinforced back room, moving with practiced efficiency. Inside, Ms. Hwang commanded, her voice sharp and professional. The panic room was small, but secure. Steel walls thick enough to stop bullets, no windows, reinforced door. Ms. Tiu Hwang punched in a code and the door sealed with a heavy thunk that sounded like a vault closing. Elise was crying, her little face red and scared. Kesha grabbed her, holding her tight against her chest, rocking her desperately. It's okay, baby, it's okay. Mama's here. Mama's got you. You're safe. But outside, the gunfire continued, screaming, explosions that shook the walls. And Keisha realized with absolute certainty that if Taejin died tonight, something inside her would break. Something fundamental would crack and never heal. Please, she whispered into Elise's hair, into the darkness of the panic room. Please let him be okay. Please. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Every second stretched into eternity. Every gunshot made her flinch. Every scream made her hold Elise tighter. When the door finally opened, When the heavy locks disengaged with a mechanical click, Keisha nearly collapsed with relief so intense it made her dizzy. Tajan stood there, covered in blood. Some his, mostly not. His suit was torn, fabric hanging in strips. His face was cut, a gash across his cheek bleeding freely. But he was alive, standing, breathing. "You're safe," he said. Not a question. A statement that needed confirmation, that needed to hear her voice. "We're fine. Are you?" He crossed the space between them in 2 strides and pulled both her and Elise into his arms, crushing them against his chest. Just held them, his whole body shaking slightly, trembling with adrenaline or fear or relief. "I'm sorry." He breathed into her hair, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. This is my world, my danger. You shouldn't..." "Stop." Kesha pulled back just enough to look at him, to see his face. "We're okay. You protected us. I put you in danger." "No. Kim did. And I'm guessing Kim's not a problem anymore." Tajan's expression went dark. "Dangerous. Absolutely lethal. He's not." Elise reached out, her little hand touching the cut on Tajan's cheek, her tiny fingers gentle. Her face scrunched up with concern, with worry for this man who'd become her world. "Owie," she said clearly. Her first word. Not mama. Not dada. "Owie." Tajan froze completely. Her first word. Kisha gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "Oh baby. Owie." Elise repeated, patting his face gently, trying to make it better. "Owie." Something in Tajan's expression crumbled. The mask fell away completely. He pulled Elise close, closing his eyes, his face twisting with emotion. "I'm okay, little one," he whispered. "I'm okay." And watching them, this dangerous man and her innocent daughter, Kesha finally understood. Truly understood. Elise hadn't seen a monster. She'd seen someone who needed saving just as much as they did. "Tajan," Kesha said softly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw everything. The loneliness, the pain, the desperate hope. "Stay," he said. Not a command, a plea. Raw and honest and vulnerable. "Both of you, stay with me. Let me protect you. Let me..." His voice cracked. "Let me be something other than a monster." Kesha reached out, took his bloodied hand in hers, laced their fingers together. "You already are." Elise giggled and patted both their faces, delighted. "Owie," she announced proudly. "All better." And somehow, impossibly, miraculously, it was. The weeks after the attack changed everything and nothing all at once. Tajan became more protective, if that was even possible. There were more guards now, subtle but present. Men in dark suits positioned at every entrance, every exit. Security cameras that Kesha tried not to think about. Bulletproof glass installed in every window. The apartment had been upgraded with more layers of protection, more safeguards, more ways to keep them safe from a world that wanted Tajan dead. But with Kesha and Elise, he was softer than ever. "She's saying more words," Kesha told him one evening as they sat in the apartment's living room. Elise was on the floor, playing with blocks that probably cost more than Keisha's entire childhood toy collection. Book, water, more. She's like a little sponge. Tajan watched Elise stack blocks with an intensity that would have been unsettling if Keisha didn't understand it now. He watched her like she was the most precious thing in the world, like she was hope made flesh. "What about Dada?" he asked quietly, almost carefully. "Has she said that yet?" Keisha's breath caught. They hadn't talked about this, hadn't defined what they were to each other, what he was to Elise. He visited every evening, brought gifts, held her, played with her. But they'd never discussed the labels, the titles, the implications. "No," Kesha said softly. "Not yet." Tajan nodded, something flickering in his expression. Disappointment, maybe, or understanding. "She has a father. Even if he's absent. I don't want to..." "You don't want to what?" Kesha asked, setting down the report she'd been reviewing. "Overstep," Tajan's jaw tightened. I know what I am. What I do. I know I have no right to want. Elise chose that moment to toddle over to Tajan, her little arms reaching up. Up! She demanded, up! He lifted her immediately, settling her on his lap. She grabbed his face with both hands, squishing his cheeks together, and giggled. Silly, she declared. Kesha's heart clenched. You have every right, she said quietly. You've been here every single day. You've protected us, provided for us, loved her when her actual father couldn't be bothered to even acknowledge her existence. Tajan's eyes met hers over Elise's head. And you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Do I have the right to want you too? The air between them shifted, became charged with something that had been building for weeks. Months, maybe, since the first moment he'd held Elise and something had cracked in both of them. Kesha stood up, crossed the space between them, and did something she'd been wanting to do for a long time. She leaned down and kissed him, soft and slow and deliberate. When she pulled back, Elise was clapping and laughing. More kisses. You've had the right, Kesha whispered. For a while now. I was just waiting for you to realize it. 3 months later. Kesha had learned to navigate Tajan's world with surprising ease. She understood the codes now, the unspoken rules. She knew which business partners could be trusted and which ones were waiting for an opportunity to strike. She knew how to read a room full of dangerous men and identify the greatest threat. She knew when to speak and when to stay silent. But more than that, she'd learned Tajan himself. She learned that he took his coffee black with exactly 2 sugars. No more, no less. That he had nightmares sometimes. Waking up in the middle of the night covered in cold sweat, reliving things he'd done and things that had been done to him. That he couldn't stand the smell of cherry blossoms because they reminded him of his sister's funeral. That he'd been building this empire since he was 16 years old, clawing his way up from nothing with blood on his hands and ice in his veins. She learned that beneath the monster everyone feared was a man who just wanted to be seen as something more. They were in his office late one evening, Elise long asleep in the apartment with Ms. Huang watching over her. Kesha was reviewing contracts while Tajan handled correspondence, their companionable silence broken only by the scratch of pen on paper and the quiet hum of the city outside. There's going to be a meeting next week, Tajan said suddenly, with the council. The council. Kesha had learned about them, the 5 most powerful crime families in South Korea, a delicate balance of power and mutual destruction. Tajan was the youngest member, the newest, and therefore the most vulnerable to challenge. What about? She asked carefully. Territory disputes. The Busans think I've been encroaching on their operations. He set down his pen and looked at her. They're not wrong. Tajan, I need to expand, Kesha. I need to be untouchable. Because if I'm not, if there's even a hint of weakness, they'll come for me. And when they come for me, they'll come for you. For Elise. So, what are you going to do? What I always do. He stood up, walked to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Make them more afraid of attacking me than they are interested in my territory. Kesha set down the contract she'd been reading. That's a temporary solution. Fear only lasts as long as you're the scariest thing in the room. What are you suggesting? Alliances. Real ones. She stood up and joined him at the window. You've been operating alone, keeping everyone at arm's length because you don't trust anyone. But what if you gave them a reason to want you to succeed? What if you made yourself valuable instead of just terrifying? Tajan turned to look at her. Really look at her. You want me to play politics? I want you to survive. Kesha met his gaze steadily. I want Elise to grow up with you in her life. I want us to have a future that doesn't involve running or hiding or waiting for the next attack. His hand came up, cupped her face gently. When did you become so strategic? When I realized I had something worth fighting for. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Kesha felt the now familiar warmth spread through her chest. This dangerous man, this beautiful monster, had become home. The council meeting was held in a private room at one of Seoul's most exclusive restaurants. Kesha wasn't supposed to attend. Women rarely did at these gatherings, but Taejin had insisted. "You're my assistant," he'd said. "You go where I go." The other council members had been less than pleased, but they couldn't refuse, without losing face. Kesha sat slightly behind Taejin, taking notes, watching everything. The leader of the Busan family was an older man named Mr. Park, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. The Incheon representative was a woman, surprisingly, Mrs. Yang, who watched Kesha with particular interest. The others were men in their 40s and 50s, successful, dangerous, used to getting what they wanted. "Let's discuss the issues," Mr. Park began, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Your operations in the port district have been affecting our shipments." Taejin leaned back in his chair, perfectly relaxed, perfectly controlled. "My operations are legitimate. If they're affecting your shipments, perhaps you should reconsider the legality of what you're shipping." The room went cold. "You dare?" "I dare state facts," Taejin interrupted smoothly. "But I didn't come here to argue. I came with a proposal." That got their attention. Kesha saw the shift, the lean forward, the sudden interest. "The tech sector is exploding," Taejin continued. "AI, robotics, semiconductors. South Korea is positioned to dominate that market. But it requires significant capital investment and political connections. I have both. What I'm proposing is a joint venture. We pool resources, create a legitimate tech consortium, and use it to expand our influence in legal markets." "Why would we need you for that?" Mrs. Yang asked, her voice like silk over steel. "Because I've already secured the contracts." Taejin nodded to Kesha, who pulled out a folder and distributed copies. 3 major government deals, pending approval. With council backing, approval is guaranteed. The room fell silent as they reviewed the documents. Keisha watched their faces, saw the calculation, the greed, the slow realization that Taejin was offering them something valuable. "What's your percentage?" Mr. Park asked finally. 30%. Protests immediately erupted, but Taejin held up a hand. 30%. "And I handle all the political relationships, all the risk. You invest capital and collect dividends. Clean money, legal money, the kind of money that doesn't disappear when governments change." Mrs. Yang smiled, slow and knowing. "You're buying legitimacy." "I'm building a future," Taejin corrected. "For all of us." The vote was 4-1 in favor. Only Mr. Park abstained, clearly unhappy but unable to deny the logic. When they left the restaurant 2 hours later, Taejin's hand found Keisha's. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it." He pulled her close. "You showed me another way." Is this the redemption arc you've been waiting for? Comment below and let me know what you think happens next. 6 months later. The apartment above the garage had become too small for the life they were building, so they'd moved into the main house. Into Taejin's space. Their space now. Elise had her own room, painted soft yellow with clouds on the ceiling. She had more toys than any child could possibly need, more clothes than she could possibly wear. But more than that, she had stability, safety, love. "She's running," Kesha called out, chasing Elise through the mansion's garden, through flowers and perfectly manicured grass. The toddler shrieked with laughter, her pigtails bouncing as she ran on chubby legs straight toward her favorite person in the world. "I've got her." Taejin swept Elise into his arms, spinning her around as she giggled uncontrollably, her laughter filling the garden like music. He'd traded his usual suit for jeans and a casual shirt. The scars on his face had faded but never fully disappeared, thin white lines that told stories. Neither had the darkness in his world, the danger, the violence that lurked just beneath the surface of their life. But Elise, stubborn, beautiful, perfect Elise, had brought light into it anyway. "Dada!" she shouted, throwing her arms around his neck. "Dada, look! Butterfly!" She'd started calling him that 3 weeks ago. Taejin had cried, actually cried. Keisha had found him in Elise's room that night, just standing over her crib, watching her sleep with tears running down his face. "You're spoiling her," Kesha said now, but she was smiling, unable to help it. "That's my job," Tajan replied, pressing a kiss to Elise's forehead before turning those dark eyes on Keisha, soft now, warm in a way they never were for anyone else. "And you, spoiling both of you is my job. Is that in my official job description? I'll add it right after loving you." Kesha's breath caught. They'd said it before, quietly in the dark, whispered against skin, but never in the daylight. Never so casual and easy. "I love you too," she said. He set Elise down and crossed to Keisha, pulled her into his arms, kissed her like they had all the time in the world. Elise made a disgusted sound. "Gross," she declared, then immediately changed her mind. More kisses. More. They laughed, the sound mixing with Elise's giggles. "I have something for you," Tajan said quietly. "Another gift?" "Tajan, you just bought me. Not that kind of gift." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Kesha's heart stopped. "I know this isn't conventional," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring that caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the grass. "I know my world is dangerous and dark and probably not the life you imagined for yourself. But you've made me believe I can be more than what I was. You and Elise, you've given me something I never thought I'd have. A family. A future." He took a breath, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked nervous. "Kesha Williams, will you marry me? Will you let me be Elise's father? Will you build this impossible life with me?" Keisha couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down her face. Happy tears. Overwhelmed tears. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes. Of course, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and Elise cheered like she understood what was happening. "Mama and Dada," she announced. "Family. Family," Tajan agreed, pulling them both close. His family? The one thing he'd never thought he deserved but somehow had been given anyway. That evening, as they sat together in the garden watching Elise chase fireflies, Keisha thought about how far they'd come. From that terrifying first meeting to this moment of perfect peace. From desperation and fear to love and hope. "What are you thinking about?" Tajan asked, his arm around her shoulders. "How none of this makes sense," Kesha said honestly. "How we shouldn't work. How this should never have happened. But it did." "But it did," she agreed, leaning into him. "And I wouldn't change a single thing." Elise ran back to them, her hands cupped carefully. "Look! Lightning bug!" She opened her hands and the firefly flew away, its light blinking in the gathering dusk. They watched it go. This small moment of beauty in a world that could be so dark. "I need to tell you something," Tajan said quietly. Kesha looked up at him, saw the seriousness in his expression. "What?" "I'm stepping back. From the council. From the operations. I'm promoting Seojun to handle the day-to-day. I'll still oversee the legitimate businesses, but the rest..." His jaw tightened. "I want to be here. With you. With Elise. I don't want to miss her childhood because I'm too busy being a monster." Kesha's throat tightened with emotion. "You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything." He looked at Elise, who was now lying on the grass looking up at the stars beginning to appear. "She sees me as her father. I want to be worthy of that. I want to be the man she believes I am." "You already are," Kesha whispered. "I'm trying to be," he corrected. "Every day I'm trying." They sat in comfortable silence as the garden filled with the songs of evening crickets and the soft glow of more fireflies. Elise eventually fell asleep between them, her small body warm and trusting. 2 years later. The transformation of Taejin Choi became the stuff of legend in Seoul's underground, the feared crime lord who'd walked away from the darkness, who'd chosen a different path. Some called it weakness, others called it wisdom. But to those who knew the truth, it was simply love. The tech consortium had exploded beyond anyone's expectations. What had started as a way to legitimize dirty money had become a genuine empire of innovation. Taejin's name was now associated with cutting-edge AI development, not bodies in the Han River. He spoke at business conferences instead of ordering executions. He wore suits to board meetings, not to intimidate rivals. But the most remarkable change wasn't in his business empire or his reputation. It was in his home. "Mama!" Elise called out, now a confident 3-year-old with her mother's eyes and her father's determination. "Mama, Dada says I can have a puppy." Kesha looked up from her laptop, where she was reviewing proposals for the consortium's latest venture. Did he now? Taejin appeared in the doorway, Elise on his shoulders, both of them wearing matching guilty expressions. "She makes a compelling argument," he said with a shrug. "How can I refuse?" "You're impossible," Kesha laughed. "Both of you." Elise climbed down and ran to her room, already planning where the puppy would sleep. Taejin crossed to Kesha, pulled her up from the couch, and wrapped his arms around her. "I have news," he said. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news." He kissed her forehead. The consortium just secured the government contract for the National AI Infrastructure Project. "We're talking about a 50 billion won deal over 5 years. Kesha's eyes widened. "Taejin, that's incredible." "It's legitimate," he said, and there was wonder in his voice. Completely legitimate. No favors owed, no dirty money, no threats. Just good business. "See? I told you there was another way." "You did." He pulled her closer. "You showed me I could be more than I was. That I didn't have to stay in the darkness just because that's where I started." A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Ms. Huang stood there, her expression conflicted. "Sir, madam, there's someone here to see you. He says he's family." Keisha felt Taejin tense against her. "I don't have family. He says his name is David Matthews, Elise's biological father." The world seemed to stop. Keisha's blood turned to ice. After all this time, after 3 years of silence, of abandonment, he showed up now? Where is he? Taejin's voice had gone cold, dangerous. The monster wasn't gone, just sleeping. "In the front sitting room. I didn't let him pass the entrance." "Good." Taejin started to move, but Kesha grabbed his arm. "I'll handle this," she said firmly. "Kesha." I said I'll handle it. She walked to the sitting room with her head high and her heart hammering. David Matthews stood by the window, older than she remembered, thinner. He turned when she entered, and she saw the shock on his face. "Kesha, you look different." 3 years will do that," she said coolly. "What do you want, David?" He had the grace to look ashamed. I heard you were here, that you'd done well for yourself. I wanted to see Elise. I wanted to... No." The word came out sharp and final. "Keisha, please. I made a mistake. I was young and stupid and scared." "You were a coward," Kesha corrected. "You told me to get rid of my baby or you'd get rid of me. Those were your exact words. Do you remember?" "I was wrong. I know that now. But she's my daughter. I have rights. You have nothing." Kesha's voice was steel. "You signed away your rights when you abandoned us. Legally, financially, emotionally. You don't get to show up now because you heard I'm not struggling anymore. I want to make it right. You can't." Kesha felt Taejin's presence behind her. Silent support. "There's no making this right. Elise has a father. A real one. One who's been there every single day since she was 11 months old. One who holds her when she has nightmares, who reads her bedtime stories, who teaches her to be brave and kind. That's not you." David's jaw clenched. "I could fight this." "Get a lawyer." Taejin stepped forward then, and David actually flinched. "You could try," Taejin said quietly. "But I should warn you, I have excellent lawyers, the best money can buy. And I have something else you don't." "What's that?" "I have love for that little girl. Real love. The kind that stays even when things get hard. The kind that doesn't run. So go ahead. Get your lawyers. Spend your money. But you'll lose. And even if by some miracle you didn't, even if you somehow got visitation rights, You'd have to look that beautiful child in the eyes and explain why you abandoned her before she was even born. David looked between them, seeing the unified front, the unshakable bond. His shoulders slumped. I just wanted to know she was okay, he said quietly. She's better than okay, Kesha said, her voice softening slightly. She's happy, healthy, loved. She has everything she needs. The best thing you can do for her is leave. Let her have the life she deserves without the confusion of a father who couldn't be bothered to care until it was convenient. David nodded slowly. You're right. He looked at Kesha one more time. I am sorry. For what it's worth. It's not worth much, Kesha said, but I accept it. Now please go. After he left, Kesha sagged against Taejin, the adrenaline draining. You okay? He asked softly. Yeah. Actually, yes. For the first time, I'm completely okay. She looked up at him. He doesn't get to haunt us anymore. He's just a stranger who shares some DNA. You're her father. Taejin kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. And you're going to be my wife, in 3 weeks. The wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and the few family members Kesha had left. Seo-jun was the best man. Ms. Huang cried through the entire ceremony, and Elise, wearing a little white dress that matched Keisha's, carried the rings down the aisle with solemn importance. Do you, Taejin Choi, take Keisha Williams to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, certain. Absolutely. And do you, Keisha Williams, take Taejin Choi to be your lawfully wedded husband? Keisha looked at this man, this former monster who'd become her everything. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. And he did. While Elise cheered and clapped, while their friends celebrated, while the world kept turning and life kept moving forward. That night, after the celebration, after Elise was tucked into bed dreaming of cake and dancing, Kesha and Taejin stood on the balcony looking out at Seoul's glittering lights. Do you ever regret it? He asked. This life? Me? Never, Keisha said without hesitation. Do you regret leaving your old life behind? Every day I wake up with you and Elise. I'm grateful I did. He pulled her close. You saved me, you know. Both of you. We saved each other. And that was the truth of it. Not a fairy tale of a princess and a monster, but a real story of broken people finding wholeness together. Of a desperate woman and a dangerous man who'd somehow built something beautiful from the ashes of their separate struggles. This is what redemption looks like, Kesha thought again, wrapped in her husband's arms. Not a grand gesture or a single moment of change, just daily choices. Just love. Just trying to be better than you were yesterday. And as they stood there, with their daughter sleeping peacefully inside, and their future stretching out before them full of possibility, Kesha knew that sometimes the most unexpected bonds really were the ones that saved us. All of us. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was this the love story you were expecting? Like this video if you want to see more stories like this. And subscribe because we've got even more incredible content coming your way. Share this with someone who loves a good redemption story because this community grows when you help spread these tales. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most unexpected bonds are the ones that save us. Sometimes the people we're most afraid of are the ones who need us most. And sometimes, just sometimes, a baby's trust can change everything. Because at the end of the day, we're all just looking for someone who sees us not for the monsters we've been, but for the people we're trying to become.